Hey, you who are on the other side, ready to dive into the invisible, into those deep layers that the outside world insists on hiding. Welcome to our journey. This is the first part of a special mini-series called The Secret Journey of Inner Alchemy, where we will explore step by step the hidden and transformative process that happens inside you, that invisible fire that changes everything, even when no one sees it. Here, each episode is an invitation to look within, unravel mysteries of the soul, understand the universal laws that govern your life, and learn how to transmute your pain into light. All of this with stories that touch the soul, reflections that make you pause and feel, and that feeling that something greater is revealing itself. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you really feel that this space speaks to you. Take advantage and comment where you are watching from and what time it is on your watch. Now turn off the lights, turn on a fan for some soft background noise, and let's navigate this first part of your inner awakening together. You will realize that true transformation does not begin in the outside world, but rather when you dare to look within, to that secret door that only opens when you are ready to truly find yourself. Have you ever felt deep down that there is something else? Something invisible and secret inside you, waiting to be awakened. This is the essence of inner alchemy, a silent transformation that goes beyond matter and what the eyes can see. The word alchemy brings to mind images of ancient laboratories with steaming potions and mystical symbols, but true alchemy is this intimate change. The transmutation of the old into the new, of the heavy into the light, of the chaotic into the harmonious. This secret journey begins now, within you, with a simple step, allowing yourself to dive into the invisible. As you listen, imagine the soft flame of a candle, not one that burns fast and makes smoke, but a steady flame that burns for hours, full of calm and presence. This is your inner path, steady, yet slow, and often silent. Historically, alchemy began as an external practice, the attempt to transform base metals into gold and find the elixir of eternal life. But spiritual truth goes far beyond that. Alchemy is a living metaphor for the process of self-improvement, self-knowledge, and transcendence. In the Middle Ages, alchemists such as Paracelsus and Geber were figures who sought to understand the secret of life and healing. Historians still debate whether alchemy was more of a science or a spiritual philosophy. Perhaps it was both, inseparable as body and soul. An interesting fact: many alchemists used animal symbols, such as the serpent, biting its own tail, the Ouroboros. This image represents the endless cycle of creation and destruction, a perfect symbol for your inner transformation. You, in this moment, are the Ouroboros, the eternal cycle that renews itself. Allow yourself to become aware of the body you inhabit. Feel the weight on your shoulders, the texture of the air on your skin, the gentle warmth that your breath creates. Each small sensation is a reminder that alchemy is happening in the present, within your being, in the now. As you relax, imagine that within you are three main elements of spiritual alchemy: sulfur, which symbolizes the soul; mercury, which represents the spirit; and salt, which is the body. This magical trio is not just any old formula. It is you in your entirety, ready to transform. In the next few moments, you will be in a space where these elements mix and begin to react, where your old self meets the new, and change, subtle and powerful, begins to happen. Breathe deeply. Feel the air coming in and going out. Imagine that with each exhalation you release a part of what no longer serves you: doubts, fears, old beliefs. And with the inhalation, you absorb calm, light, strength, and wisdom. This is your secret journey of inner alchemy, which begins now, without haste, without pressure, just with you and the infinite within. The door you are about to open is not made of wood or metal and has no visible locks or external bars. It is inside, you hidden behind the layers of thoughts, emotions, and beliefs that you have accumulated throughout your life. This door, you will soon discover, only opens from the inside. And to go through it, you need courage, patience, and a silent surrender. Have you ever noticed how, at many times, life seems to push you outwards, towards distractions, towards the noise and what is happening around you. Society wants you to look outwards, towards the next step, the next problem, the next distraction. But inner alchemy invites you to do the opposite, to turn your gaze inwards, towards that intimate space where the true treasure resides. Imagine yourself standing in front of a mirror that does not reflect your physical appearance, but rather your soul. This internal reflection is often blurry, confusing, and full of shadows. It is normal to feel afraid when looking at this mirror. After all, looking inside means confronting your wounds, your shadows, your hidden pains. But know this. This is exactly where true transformation begins. The beginning of inner alchemy happens when you dare to look at these shadows without running away, without judging, only with the calm curiosity of someone who wants to understand. It is as if you were an alchemist in front of a raw material. This material is you with everything you carry, and your job is to purify, refine, and transmute it. In ancient times, initiates of mystical traditions often underwent rituals of isolation and introspection before receiving profound teachings. They knew that the door to true knowledge is not opened with external keys, but only with the key of self-knowledge and internal acceptance. You may even think that you have tried this path before and failed, or that looking within is a very difficult task, too complex for busy days. But in fact, this door is always there waiting for you to take the first step, even if it is a small one. And once it starts to open, life begins to reveal itself in a new way, full of meanings that were previously hidden. Interestingly, in modern psychology, the practice of full attention, mindfulness, is a kind of key to this internal door. You may find it curious that such ancient practices are gaining so much scientific validation today, but this only confirms the depth of what inner alchemy has taught us for centuries. Historians still debate whether this practice originated exclusively in Eastern traditions, or if it is a universal wisdom that emerges in various cultures. When you allow yourself to surrender, you begin to realize that the door that only opens from within is not a barrier, but a passage that takes you from confusion to clarity, from chaos to balance, from pain to learning. Feel your chest opening up, even if just a little bit. Your breathing becomes lighter, your heart begins to beat with a different rhythm. You are beginning to inhabit this inner space with presence, with attention, with silent love. Take your time. Every moment you dedicate to this inner opening is a step toward the alchemy of the soul. And remember, not every step needs to be big or dramatic. Transformation happens at its own pace. This is your secret door. You don't find it by seeking answers outside, but by surrendering yourself to the mystery that lives within. And as this door opens, you already begin to feel the magic of alchemy taking shape, an invisible but unshakable process that will transform not only what you see, but who you are. You feel it. Maybe you can't name it, but you feel it. A density, a burden, something that weighs on your chest and that at times seems impossible to dissolve. But what is called raw matter in inner alchemy, that part of you that feels pain, anger, attachment, or confusion, is not a mistake. It is not a defect. It is precisely this chaotic and unfinished mass that begins the process of transmutation. Every pain you carry has a source. Every shadow you try to hide just wants to be seen. Every attachment that ties you to situations, people, or old versions of yourself carries a deep desire for security. And it is exactly this set of raw, uncomfortable, and often unwanted sensations that forms the prima materia, the raw material necessary for the initial fire of the soul's alchemy. You can imagine yourself as a container. Inside you there are impure metals, poorly digested emotions, unresolved memories. And instead of discarding them, the path of true alchemy is to place them inside a crucible, a symbolic space where the fire of consciousness begins to burn. But this fire is not destructive. It is purifying. It slowly transforms what was once dense into something more subtle and clear. In classical alchemy, this process was called calcinatio, a symbolic burning that represented purification through conscious suffering. It is interesting to note how different traditions around the world have described this same process in different ways. Christianity, for example, speaks of the fire of the Holy Spirit that refines and purifies the soul. In Buddhist traditions, suffering is seen as an opportunity to dissolve the ego and achieve compassion. Historians still debate whether these similarities are cultural coincidences or signs of a universal wisdom that springs forth in every corner of the world. At this point, you may feel resistance. After all, who wants to face their own pain, traumas, and unhealed fragments head-on? But it is important to remember, ignoring the raw material does not make it disappear. It only hides, creating sabotage, repetitions, and blockages. The first step here is to allow what is hidden to come to the surface, not like an avalanche, but like a breeze that lifts the veil. Maybe it is an old feeling that you have always pushed down. Maybe a fear that appears whenever you try to change. Maybe a relationship that, even after it has ended, still holds you back energetically. All of this is raw material. And there is something eccentric about all of this. In medieval alchemy, it was believed that even human feces could contain gold. Symbolically, even that which we consider most dirty or shameful in ourselves can be the fertile ground for the noblest transformation. It is an uncomfortable but deeply liberating reminder. You do not need to understand all of your traumas or pain at once. Just start with one point, a feeling, a memory, and instead of running away, you sit in front of it. You observe it. You allow it to speak, to show itself. You don't fight it, you listen to it. This seemingly simple act is an internal revolution, because for the first time, instead of rejecting your pain, you invite it into the fire of consciousness. And something begins to happen. It begins to dissolve. It doesn't disappear immediately, but it begins to change form. That old anger, for example, when felt consciously, can reveal sadness. And sadness can reveal a desire to be loved. And little by little, what seemed like just a stone in your chest reveals itself as a forgotten seed, ready to blossom when warmed by the light of your presence. The dissolution of raw matter is this: a conscious surrender to the process of transformation. It is trusting that there is an invisible thread connecting each dense emotion to a deeper revelation. It is allowing the heat of your attention to transform pain into wisdom, shadow into clarity, attachment into freedom. And even if you feel incapable, clumsy, or confused in the process, know this: this is part of the journey. The inner alchemist is not a perfect being. He is someone who accepts to sit before the fire day after day with humility and patience. You don't need to rush. Just allow the heat to start working. Let the metals melt. Let what seemed solid become fluid. You are at the beginning of the great laboratory of the soul, and everything you need is already there inside you. You feel the ground disappearing beneath your feet. There is no map, no manual, and even though you try to hold on to old certainties, they slip away like water through your fingers. This is where the true dive into the waters of the unknown begins. And no, it is not comfortable, but it is not the end either. In fact, it is the beginning of a deeper trust. The one that is born when everything outside of you seems to collapse, and the only possible anchor becomes faith. These waters represent the second stage of the inner alchemical journey, the moment when the ego begins to give way, certainties begin to crumble, and a frighteningly silent space emerges where you no longer know who you are, what you want, or where you're going. The alchemists called this stage solutio, dissolution, a state in which everything that was fixed dissolves, mixes, becomes liquid. It's like falling into a deep river, blindfolded. Your immediate instinct is to swim hard, seek shore, struggle to return to what is known. But these waters have no shores, and the more you resist, the more tired you become. Until, in an almost magical moment, you decide to stop. You stop fighting, and to your surprise, you float. Letting go of control is not giving up. It's accepting that there is a greater intelligence guiding the process, even if you don't yet understand it. It's trusting that instead of drowning, you can learn to dance with the chaos, like someone learning to surf a wave that seemed destructive. You've been in this place before. Maybe when you lost someone. Maybe when everything seemed to be going wrong at the same time. Maybe you woke up one day and something inside you whispered, "We can't go on like this anymore." Life has an ironic way of pushing you into these waters without warning, and yet each time it happens, it offers you a unique chance for rebirth. And don't think this is just poetry. There are neuroscience studies that show that moments of crisis, when everything seems to be falling apart, activate areas of the brain linked to deep learning. It's as if the mind, when torn from its routine, is forced to create new connections. That's why so many people report life changes, spiritual awakenings, or profound healings after major breakdowns. Historically, this dive has been portrayed as a rite of passage in various cultures. In shamanic traditions, the initiate was taken to a dark forest or left to fast for days, so that upon confronting his or her deepest fears, he or she would emerge transformed. Christian mystics spoke of the dark night of the soul, a period of complete absence of meaning, where even the voice of God seemed to have fallen silent. Historians still debate whether this symbolic language of night and water has a common origin or emerged spontaneously in each civilization. What is certain is that all of us, at some point, will have to cross these waters. And here's the eccentric part. The more you try to understand everything mentally, the deeper you sink. But when you accept not knowing, something different happens. Intuition begins to speak. Signs become clearer. Synchronicities multiply. It's as if life was saying, "Now that you've let go of control, I can finally show you the way." Letting go of control, however, doesn't mean becoming passive. It means listening more presently. It means acting with faith, even without guarantees. It's like walking down a dark hallway, guided only by a thread of light. You only see the next step, and yet you decide to walk. There is a serene beauty in this kind of surrender. You begin to realize that the waters are not against you. They are the womb where your new self is being gestated. And like any childbirth, there is pain, yes, but there is also a promise. You are about to be reborn. And it is at this point that the old armor of the ego begins to rust. The character you have built for the world begins to crumble. And beneath the layers, something truer emerges. Something you may have forgotten, but that has always been there. Your essence. This is where faith stops being a blind belief and becomes a living trust. You don't believe out of obligation. You believe because you feel it. Because even without proof, something inside you says, keep going. You are exactly where you need to be. So when everything seems dark, silent, or meaningless, remember, you are floating in the sacred waters of dissolution. Don't try to rush through it. Don't try to figure it all out. Just breathe, feel, and allow the currents within you to carry you a little deeper. Maybe what you find there isn't an immediate answer, but a presence. And that presence, silent, welcoming, formless, will be the beginning of true reconstruction. After you've crossed the waters of the unknown, a dense, almost solid silence emerges, a place where time seems suspended and everything false has been stripped away. Here there are no more distractions, no more excuses, no more social masks, just you. And the thing you've always tried to avoid. It's at this point in your journey that you meet the Shadow Keeper. He doesn't shout. He doesn't chase you. He's just there, still deep, mirroring all the parts of you that have been rejected, hidden, or demonized. It's your anger that's been swept under the rug. It's the envy you've disguised as humility. It is fear that has donned the armor of independence. It is guilt buried beneath forced smiles. And it is not your enemy. The guardian of the shadow, despite its frightening appearance, is the most sacred portal of the inner journey. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist who popularized the concept of the shadow, said that true enlightenment is not achieved by imagining figures of light, but rather by making the inner darkness conscious. Without this, every attempt at spiritual evolution is just ego disguised as virtue. It is difficult to admit that there is hatred, judgment, vanity, and a desire for control within us. But when you have the courage to look without running away, something surprising happens. The guardian transforms. It stops being a monster and reveals itself as a wounded aspect, a frightened child, an exhausted woman, a man hungry for love. It shows that fear does not want to destroy you. It wants to protect you. That anger, once explosive, was trying to impose limits where you were nullifying yourself. That deep sadness was a request for a break, for care, for listening. This is the first secret of light. It arises when you embrace the darkness. What you fear in yourself is not the problem. The problem is how much you try to hide, avoid, or fight against it, because everything you deny controls you. But what you accept sets you free. There is a passage in the book of Psalms that echoes this process. If I say, "Surely the darkness will cover me, even the night will be light around me," Psalm 139:11. In other words, when you allow even darkness to be included in your path with God, it becomes an instrument of revelation. And this encounter is not theoretical, it is visceral. You can experience it in a dream that shakes you, in an anxiety attack that forces you to stop, in a breakup that exposes your insecurities, in a mirror that you don't want to look at. The Tor, shadow manifests itself in situations that you attract or resist until you are ready to face them. However, the process of integration does not occur through rational analysis. You do not fix the shadow. You listen to it, you love it, you recognize it as part of yourself. And this act of love is so rare that it disarms all defenses. This is where the ego, for the first time, lets its guard down, because it realizes that it no longer needs to pretend to be perfect in order to be accepted. And it is in this space where pain and grace meet that a light is born that does not depend on religion, spiritual performance, or good works. It is a light that springs from the naked truth that you are human and you are loved anyway. This encounter also has neuroscientific support. Psychologist Richard Schwartz, creator of the therapeutic model internal family systems, states that each internal part that we consider dark has a positive function but has been distorted by trauma. By dialoguing with these parts with compassion, the psychic system finds harmony, something that several spiritual traditions already knew, but that science is now beginning to validate. Ancient myths illustrate this precisely. In the myth of Inanna, the Sumerian goddess of the sky, she must descend to the underworld to face her dark sister, Ereshkigal. Only after stripping herself of all her crowns and titles is she able to find reconciliation and be reborn more powerful. Christ, before the resurrection, also descends to the mansion of the dead, where he faces the deepest darkness of the human soul. The lesson is the same. Only those who descend into the shadows are able to emerge into true light. But be careful. This process is not about wallowing in guilt. On the contrary, it's about letting go of the pain you carry and finally allowing it to be transmuted. You don't defeat the shadow by fighting it. You defeat it with presence. Sometimes all that shadow part needed was to be heard. And when it realizes it won't be ignored anymore, it calms down. And then you realize the shadow guardian who seemed like a threat was actually an angel in disguise, sent not to punish you, but to teach you to love what you feared most about yourself. This is the turning point. This is where the light begins to dawn within you, not as something that comes from outside, but as an ember that has always been lit, just waiting to be revealed. And you begin to see with new eyes. Anger becomes a creative force. Sadness becomes empathy. Fear, now named, transforms into wisdom. You stop dividing yourself into light and shadow and begin to see yourself as a whole being, in constant refinement. Alchemical gold is not about being perfect. It is about being true. And this is only possible when you have the courage to walk to the dark center of yourself and stay, because there, exactly there, is where the strongest light decides to be born. Hey, you who have come this far. Feel this. It is not just a video. It is the call of something that has always been inside you, but was silenced by the noise of the world. This is part 1 of the mini-series, The Secret Journey of Inner Alchemy, an invitation to cross the invisible. Awaken your purest essence and remember who you were before the world told you who you should be. In this first crossing, we walked together through 5 deep portals. You understood that the emptiness you feel is not absence. It is space, sacred space where transformation begins. You faced the door that only opens from within, the one that requires the courage to look into your own abyss. You learned that pain and shadow are not enemies, but raw material for the inner gold. You surrendered to the chaos of the waters, floating between uncertainties, doubts, and the surrender that heals. And finally, you found the Guardian, that part of you that you fear the most. But that, curiously, holds the first secret of the light. This is just the beginning. So before we continue, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. I like to imagine each person in their own corner of the world going through this journey with me. And of course, if this touched something in you, like this video and subscribe, but only if you really felt that here is your place, because part 2 is coming, and in it you will discover why the truest light can only be born from the most honest darkness. We will talk about symbolic death, silent purification, the fire that cleanses the ego, and the vision that penetrates veils. So take a deep breath and get ready to continue. Gold is closer than you think.